That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Saltburn, the sophomore film directed by Emerald Fennell, which MGM is releasing November 17th, 2023, and notably premiered at the Telluride Film Festival.
I know this director's first film,
Promising Young Woman.
which I recall enjoying.
I did as well, yes.
This film, a student at Oxford University finds himself drawn into the world of a charming and aristocratic classmate who invites him to his eccentric family's sprawling estate for a summer never to be forgotten. What's your pull quote?
The liaisons aren't nearly dangerous enough in Emerald Fennell's initially interesting but ultimately feckless exercise in the depravity of class issues and the polite homophobia of the mid-2000s.
Mine. This seemingly provocative exploration slowly transitions into a silly and depraved episode of any random crime fiction podcast. Based on the premise, I was expecting something a lot more. This just feels so silly. Like, it just unravels at the end.
It has so many familiar sticking points. I mean, this is the prep school version of The Talented Mr. Ripley.
So the story is, it's 2006, and there's a guy named Oliver, played by...
Oliver Quick, played by Barry Keoghan.
Who is now starting school at Oxford. And he's made to seem like a loser. He doesn't have any friends. We're told he's there on scholarship, so he's like one of the poor kids. He's very smart, but just not a popular kid. And he becomes fixated on this guy named Felix, played by...
Jacob Elordi, who you can see as Elvis in Coppola's Priscilla. He's also in Euphoria.
Who's supposed to be like the most beautiful, popular kid in school. And they become friends. Fast friends. They're only friends for like the first, I guess, like 2 semesters before summer. When Felix kind of feels bad for Oliver. We can get into why, but he invites him to spend the summer at his family's estate, Saltburn. And Felix agrees to go because he's like in love with this man. He goes, and who's at the castle? Felix's mom, played by
Rosamund Pike.
His dad,
Richard E. Grant.
his sister,
Sadie Subrall.
and his cousin,
Archie Matakew.
who also goes to Oxford and who's not nice to Oliver back at school. So it's all of them. They also have a house guest played by...
Carrie Mulligan, who's credited as Poor Dear Pamela.
I thought that character was funny.
Yes.
There are a lot of things in this that are funny, but she doesn't stay the full time. She kind of gets kicked out. Anyway, then this movie turns into a lot of familiar things where Oliver has become manipulative and he's trying to wiggle his way into the family. And what ends up happening is Felix dies, Farley gets kicked out of the house due to Oliver saying stuff, and the sister dies. So now it's just the mom and the dad and Oliver there. And the dad says, you know what? I need you to leave. Like, it's too painful for my wife to have you here because she's so fond of you and you remind her of her son. And then we're made to believe that maybe the dad wrote Oliver a check so he'll leave. And then all of a sudden we flash forward 16 years to 2022, don't know what happened in the interim, and we see that the dad has died. Like, it's in the papers. Mm-hmm. So now all of a sudden Oliver is sitting at a coffee shop when the mom, Rosamund Pike, walks in. And she's like, oh my God, Oliver, like, I can't believe it's you. You're all grown up, even though he looks exactly the same.
Right.
You look so different. You're all grown up. How are you doing? Not well. How are you doing, girl? Not well. And she's like, well, now that everyone's gone, why don't you come stay with me at Saltburn? He goes, and immediately they're like a married couple. And she like signs over Saltburn to him. And then now she's dead. He kills her. We see him kill her. And the final scene of the movie, now that Oliver has taken over Saltburn, is him dancing around the house naked to Murder on the Dance Floor. Mm-hmm. The end.
Which, that scene is a ripoff of Claire Denis' Beau Travail with Denis Lavant doing Rhythm of the Night. That's...
So it's important to know that while the wife, Rosamund Pike's on her deathbed, and Oliver is basically spilling all the beans. And we get like a little montage of how he is responsible for all of this. Like, he manipulated things so that he could meet Felix and work his way into his life and make him think that he's poor, and like that he killed Felix. And it went off the rails so hard for me.
It goes off the rails too hard, and it doesn't have the depth that it needs to where all of this feels kind of like a jumbled mess. I don't understand what Oliver really wants, or what his aim really is.
That's my biggest issue, is I don't understand his MO, because the way Oliver gets close to Felix is that one day he sees Felix with a flat tire on his bike, and Oliver offers him his bike, and then they become friends. But we learn that Oliver actually put a nail in Felix's bike, planning to have the flat tire. But then so much relies on that. Like,
we don't need to. I really hate the last 10 minutes of it, because it tells us everything. We don't need to see that.
No.
I would have loved the ambiguity of maybe when Rosamund Pike's like, come back to Saltburn, and the very next scene should be her tombstone lined up next to her kid.
Yes.
That would have been mint.
Yeah, I would have preferred the ambiguity of not knowing how involved Oliver really was in everything.
Yeah, I don't need to know all that. I can put that together in my mind.
But then it's like, okay, so the depraved part of my pull quote is that we get a couple of shocking scenes. One is, because I wasn't clear on Oliver's sexuality. I think he wants to be Felix. I don't know that he wants to be with Felix. Oh, I didn't mention that Oliver is sort of like narrating the film, like bookending it. And the opening scene is him saying like, was I in love with Felix? I don't know. I loved him, but was I in love with him? And then it cuts to the film starting. So we never get that answer, but I didn't necessarily...
I think that he did desire him.
Well, then I'm confused, because it's like, so you plan to take over this man's life, you kill him, kill his mama, kill his sister, like... But then also there's a scene early on when they're at Saltburn, and Oliver is watching Felix, because they have to share a bathroom, in the tub. So Felix is in the tub and he's masturbating, and we can assume he ejaculates in the tub. And then we see Oliver drink that bathwater. And I mean, that was like, oh my God.
And lick the drain. To me, that's not shocking, because when you really secretly desire somebody that you have no outlet for, I can see, it's like Isabelle Huppert sniffing the semen-soaked Kleenex. And the audience that we saw with, I think, were a lot of young women were shocked.
I don't think
and gagged at
I don't think
like,
that in itself is like, oh my God, how could someone do that? It's more shocking to me that, like, his attraction to this man was not clear to me. And then when you realize what he's done, it just seems so odd. Like, you were so infatuated with him that you wanted his life. I don't know. Then the next shocking scene is Oliver has sex with Felix's sister, but she's on her period. So she's actively bleeding. And then he does things to her with his hands and his mouth, which we don't need to describe.
He says, I'm a
And then the
vampire.
next scene we see is him in the bathtub with his face covered in blood.
But and what annoyed me about the audience that we were sitting, there was almost no reaction to that, but yet the semen that was in the bathtub that was probably, washed away also with soap in the water is more uncomfortable for people to watch than him in period blood.
Okay, anyway.
That annoyed me.
So, I was going to go through my notes. When Oliver shows up to school, he looked like Harry Potter.
With those glasses, yeah. Well, Harry Potter, several people are reading Harry Potter. It's 2006.
Then, the way we know Oliver and Felix have connected is after Oliver loans Felix his bike, then, like, I guess the next day, Oliver shows up at the local pub, and Felix is there with his friends, including Farley, his cousin, who's been mean to Oliver. And Felix is like, come over, sit with us. And they start drinking, and there are maybe like 8 people. And then Oliver's like, well, I need to like check out. I have an early date tomorrow. And everyone's like, no, you need to buy the next round of shots. And Farley's really pushing him. And he's like, okay. And he gets to the bar and he's like, well, I can't really afford to buy the shots. And Felix can see that. So Felix comes over and goes, hey, you dropped this money, which of course he didn't, to pay for the shots. But then we learn in that stupid montage at the end that Oliver did have money in his wallet. The story kind of culminates in or on Oliver's birthday, because he's at Saltburn when his birthday arrives, and the mom goes, we should throw you a huge party. And they do. But the day of his party, that morning, Felix wakes him up and goes, hey, get dressed, look cute, we're going to go on a road trip. And Felix takes Oliver to his mom's house. And up to that point, how did Oliver describe his parents?
Oh, druggy alcoholics that apparently lived in some hovel.
And the dad died, we're told.
Yes.
Which is how he kind of grows closer to... Because one night after Felix is kind of upset with Oliver at a point, and then Oliver makes up this lie. We find out that his dad died. So then, of course, Felix feels bad for him. So when we show up at the mom's house, of course, the audience, we're like, oh no, what is this going to be like? And Oliver's acting like, please don't take me there. And when we pull up to the house, his family is like upper middle class. They have a beautiful home.
Vacation in Mykonos.
They vacation in Mykonos every summer. The dad is not dead. So, of course, Felix is pissed.
And he has sisters.
Yeah, and he has siblings, which he said he didn't. So that's kind of the unraveling, which is, I don't know the talented Mr. Ripley very well, but you said that mirrors.
Yeah, and it's at that point where when Ripley is discovered by Dickie Greenleaf, where he's like, I gotta kill this man right now because he's gonna let my secret out. Jacob Elordi's like, you make my blood run cold, but it's too late to cancel this party, so you'll just leave in the morning. It's like, well, that's a big no-no. I also knew
And then that's when Felix dies, after they have their falling out.
And I also knew that Oliver was lying almost immediately, but especially when that scene where he hits on Rosamund Pike, but she's also complaining about poor dear Pamela, who's been extricated from the palace that morning, and he's like, oh, how do you know she was telling the truth? She might have been lying about all her tales of woe.
I knew Oliver was a liar the minute we see him because he looks shifty. He does. I really like Barry Keoghan. I liked him in
Banshees of Inisherin.
Yes, and I think he's equally as compelling in this movie.
It's a fascinating character to play, for sure.
And I thought he did a very good job with it.
I agree.
So what did I like the best? I like Barry playing this character. I think he's really cute, and his eyes, there's something about his eyes that are very captivating.
Yeah.
I really liked Felix's mom and dad.
Rosamund Pike and Richard E. Grant are a lot of fun.
Although it felt like...
AbFab.
It felt like an AbFab episode that maybe like Jennifer Saunders wrote and threw away.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't as witty as any episode. I mean, maybe season 4 was shitty. Maybe an episode of season 4. But they're funny, but I feel like they could have been more witty.
Well, they aren't given any depth. It's like,
no.
Okay, I can believe that these boring, vapid, wealthy,
super rich,
the elitists are one thing, but I also don't think they're stupid.
That's what I'm saying. They felt kind of dumb, but then they don't, like, it seems like the dad is aware of some things, but most of the time he just seems like a crazy cuckoo bird.
And I'm not aware of what's permissible and what's not,
right?
Because it's the mere mention of Farley having done cocaine on the night that Felix also overdosed is enough to get him
kicked out,
expelled from the estate.
But then it seems like their entire life is nothing but like decadent. I mean, their adult daughter just sits around smoking cigarettes all day and night. So it just feels like, what are the rules? Speaking of rules, though, when we first are introduced to the mother, we're told that she has a phobia of ugliness, and you can't have any stubble, so you have to always be clean shaven. I thought she was very funny.
She is.
I didn't like how she was styled, though. I felt like that woman should have looked a lot more expensive. She looks like a regular lady.
And again, it just doesn't... Yeah,
with grown out highlights.
She looks,
I just did.
Yeah, I like Rosamund Pike a lot.
But I liked her.
Don't use terminology like sir or ma'am with us, but wear a black tie to dinner every night.
There's a karaoke scene where we meet this black lady who's part of this elite group, and her describing her marriage and her family, I thought was funny. And then we get to the karaoke scene where her husband is singing like apple bottom jeans. And then this is when Farley really is kind of a dick because he plays a song basically, I don't know the song, but it's like the lyrics are basically like someone relying on other people to do for them.
Yeah.
But so Oliver gets upset, but he goes, "Oh, Farley, this song relates to you too," because we learned that Farley is Felix's cousin. His mom is Felix's dad's sister, but Farley's parents are out of the picture for some reason. So Felix's dad supports Farley. So Farley thinks he's like a rich kid like Felix, but really it's like the charity of his uncle. So that night after the karaoke thing, Oliver seduces Farley and they have sex.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at that moment that we're told that Farley stole like some artwork and tried to sell it. And that's what gets him in trouble. It just is like too, I don't know. I'm just so confused by Oliver's motives.
I think I'm confused by some motives. It's also quite predictable, and I don't quite understand the payoff. So you are going to get Saltburn. Can you pay the property taxes?
Can you afford the staff? Did she leave you all of her money too?
Right.
I just think there's so much that I needed to understand to really feel like something happened. But as it is, it's like I didn't really care about this rich family. Oh, the other thing to mention is Felix is a nice guy, right?
There's a lot depending on. So he orchestrated this flat tire on the bike, to give Felix yours. But how did you know he was going to come back to feel like he had gratitude for you? Yeah, there's a lot that doesn't make sense to me.
I almost wish the family would have been a little more vile, or because they just seem like decent people who are obviously living in another stratosphere, but
they're living in a bubble. But it's I also wanted to understand what's so attractive to him about this palace where nothing ever changes. I liked the kind of the midsection in the film where it appeared that Oliver Quick was going to be kind of like the Terrence Stamp character in Theorem, the Pasolini film, where he's an interloper and sleeps with everyone in the family.
Oh yes, I remember you watching that film, and I was thinking of that in this film. But yeah, no,
But it kind of drops the ball on that. I will say I was appreciative of the period-specific soundtrack selection.
Yes,
that
the soundtrack's good.
Because we got Arcade Fire and Ladytron in one scene, and then there's a bizarre use of MGMT where they're naked in the fields.
I have to mention, I hated Farley's hair so much. The shape of it. Oh, I just hated it. And then because he was a despicable person, like, girl, get your shape together.
I will say I think it's brave of Fennell to make kind of obnoxious, annoying, slightly villainous queer supporting character, because we usually don't get to see that.
True.
But also thinking of the mid-2000s and also he's the only racial other in here, and he confronts Felix in one scene about not knowing the name of his footmen who are black. And also Felix says something like, "Well, we've accepted you for being different," as in gay, and the word that nobody wants to say.
What would you give this movie?
2.5.
I would give it 2.5 out of 5. I thought it was okay. It did feel long.
It feels too long.
By the hour 15 mark, I was ready for it to be
Although
over.
we forgot the third most shocking, and I wouldn't say it's shocking, but he does get naked and
if you
copulate with the gravesite.
we need to talk about that, because that also confused me. At the end, when Felix dies and we're at his funeral, Oliver gets fully naked while it's raining and like penetrates the dirt.
Yeah.
I didn't again, I was so confused, like, what's happening right now?
This is the only way I could have him.
But what I was gonna say is, if you think Barry's attractive, we do see a lot of him naked at the end.
We do, yeah.
So there's that. Anything else?
No.
Hit the thanks button. Listen to our podcast. Bye.